Wheel of Time community, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really glad that summer's almost over and that we're getting into the fall season. I don't know if the listeners realize, but we pre-record these episodes. So right now it's the beginning of September in real time, and I cannot wait for the heat to be over and to get some fall weather and for pumpkin spice everything. I love fall. So I'm very, very excited.
The spice must flow. Yes. Okay.
So before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. So Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
In this episode, we'll be covering chapters 16 and 17 of The Eye of the World. In these chapters, Nynaeve is back and she's not happy with the state of things. She and Moiraine have words, and Nynaeve joins our ragtag bunch of heroes. Against all odds, the group has a pretty good evening, laughing and dancing until a Myrddraal shows up and crashes the party. Whitecloaks get all crazy and they have to run for their lives yet again. Chapter 16 is called The Wisdom, and the icon is the Avendasora leaf.
All right, let's get into it. Here's a quick summary of Chapter 16 to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. Rand and the others are heading in to see Nynaeve when Min pulls Rand aside to tell him that Nynaeve is a part of her vision and that they are all in more danger now than before. Rand reassures her that Nynaeve would never hurt any of them and hurries back to the group. They go into a private dining room where Moiraine and Nynaeve are having a battle of wills, staring at each other across the table. Once they all sit down, Lan asked how Nynaeve found them in the first place, and she impresses him by saying that she was able to follow his trail. They all try to convince Nynaeve that they can't go back with her to Emond's Field because the Trollocs are after them and that they're safer with Moiraine, but Nynaeve doesn't believe it. Moiraine sends everyone out to talk to her alone. Afterwards, Nynaeve comes out and talks with Rand, noticing how much he's changed since leaving the Two Rivers. She explains that Moiraine wanted to know some more information about the boys, especially if any of them had been born outside, and Rand realizes Nynaeve knows the truth. He tells her about what Tam said during the fever dream, but Nynaeve reassures him that his parents loved him as much as any parents could, and that she kept his secret from Moiraine. This is the part of the book where we start to get these chapters that are focused in on character development.
Yeah.
When the group splits up soon, we'll see several of these that really dig into who the characters are and, show us what they're all about. And this is really the first one of those. And this time it's to give us some more insight into who Nynaeve is.
Min shows up. She tells Rand that the sparks that she sees around the group are stronger now, and that before it took only 3 or 4 of them standing together to see the sparks, but now she's able to see them with just Nynaeve and Moiraine.
Yeah, she needed several people together to see them, but now it's just taking 2 people together. And I think that's because Nynaeve kind of completes the picture. So now that she's locked in, it's they're that much firmer set on their path.
Do you mean before there was only a chance that these people could actually be the sparks that fight? And they had to be together, but now that she's there, there's always sparks?
No, I think it has more to do with going back to video games. You have to gather everything you need before the game lets you progress to its next portion.
Got it.
I kind of feel like now that Nynaeve's there, she was the last piece of the puzzle. And so now that she's there, they can now progress further into the storyline.
You have gathered your party. You may now move forth.
Exactly,
yes,
right?
Got it. Okay.
So when Min stops Rand, Tom says, "We don't have time for that, boy." And I love her response to him. Min gave the white-haired gleeman a sharp look. "Go juggle something," she snapped, drawing Rand away from the others. And I just like that she's like, "Screw you, dude, for making assumptions." I really like her spirit, how she's not going to take guff from some random person, And then I also like how Rand just immediately reassures Min that Nynaeve would never do anything to hurt them. Right. He doesn't even hesitate. And I think Nynaeve is the only person in the series that he never doubts, at least from this, initial group. He never doubts her. He knows that he can trust her no matter what throughout the entire series. And I think she's really the only one that he can say that about.
All the way to the very end. She's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that he is so confident that his trust in her is totally valid.
Yeah. And what's really kind of cool about Rand is when he comes back to the group after talking to men, he doesn't out her. He doesn't say anything about what she can do. He just kind of plays it off. Okay, let's get going. And
you mean like keeping her secret?
Yeah, he keeps her secret. He just totally does not out her at all. Because it's never good to out people.
No, definitely. You need to wait until they feel safe to out themselves. You don't want to force it upon them.
And then we enter the dining room, where I think the whole scene with Moiraine and Nynaeve is just really well put together. I mean, we have each individual person. We kind of get a snapshot of their reaction of sitting there on the bench. Egwene is ashamed and hiding herself and like
hiding her hair.
Yeah, hiding her hair. And then, Perrin is just eyes down. Like everyone has their own specific reaction to Nynaeve. And there's just...
It's just really well written.
I agree. And you just know, just these two women staring at each other down at the different ends of the table. This is going to be an epic battle of wills.
Yeah. And already Nynaeve can match Moiraine when it comes to intimidation and like being a formidable woman, which that says a lot considering that, Nynaeve is still very young and she's from Emond's Field, so she's very inexperienced. And Moiraine is twice her age and she's an Aes Sedai, but they are pretty evenly matched. And when Nynaeve finally reaches her potential, like when she grows up a little bit and really blossoms into her full potential, she's going to be an unstoppable force.
Yes, she is. Nynaeve immediately surprises and impresses Lan because she was able to follow his trail.
Right.
She was able to follow their trail through all of that, him hiding it, and he's
impressed.
he's impressed because he's a warder and he's lived in the Borderlands. He knows his stuff. And it's really just quite a feat.
Yeah, I like that he admits that even a Borderland trained soldier would have trouble trying to track a trail that Lan was trying to hide.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what she's done is really impressive.
It is.
And I love the relationship between Lan and Nynaeve, how it's based on mutual respect. Like, Nynaeve is a beautiful woman, and we find out that she's incredibly powerful in the power. Like, she's a very powerful channeler. But that's not what Lan sees in her. Like, he doesn't fall for her because of these things. Like, he falls for her because she's competent and she's strong. Like, he's a warder. He's used to being around Moiraine. He's used to being around powerful women. Yes. It doesn't even faze him. Like, that's not what impresses him. He's impressed by her talent and her skills that have nothing to do with her ability in the channel. I mean, she comes to him and kind of beats him at his own game in a way, like with her tracking and her woodsman skills. And she's so strong. And that's what he really falls for. And she comes to him as an equal.
Right.
And I just think it's so rare in fiction, not just fantasy, but fiction in general, to find these relationships where both parties come as equals. And it's their mutual respect and mutual recognition of what the other person can do that is what sparks them to fall in love with each other.
You're right. That is
I really
something
like
that's
that.
not really, especially back in the 90s when this was released.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Who is the standard by which Two Rivers people judge almost all of their abilities? Who would that be? Oh, that's right. Tam Althor. Right. Because Nynaeve makes this comment of
she's second only to
my
Tam
father
Althor.
taught me all these things. Maybe only Tam Althor is, better than him and therefore me. And it's like,
yeah, he's
wow.
the best tracker.
Yeah.
He's the best bowsman. He's a super ninja.
Yeah. Love Tam Althor. Nynaeve gets a lot of flack here in this scene and in general from a lot of people in the series because she can come off as a hothead.
Yeah.
For example, how she threatens to reveal Moiraine and Lan's true identities to the people of Baerlon.
Right.
But This time around, I was able to kind of put myself in her shoes for a bit, and I realized that what's going on is her people are being threatened. Her people were whisked away in the night by an Aes Sedai, whose only explanation for why was a lot of stuff that belongs in the stories.
Right.
The only weapon she has at her disposal right now is to threaten Lan and Moiraine's secret identity. And she's willing to do that. She's going to expose them if she has to, whatever it takes to get her people back home.
Right, because from Nynaeve's perspective, this is a rescue mission.
It is.
Like she is chasing after these young people who've been, like you were saying, whisked away by this Aes Sedai. And so she has no reason to protect Moiraine and Lan. They're the enemy. They're the bad guys. She's trying to protect her people from them, from her perspective.
Yeah. And I think people give Nynaeve a lot of flack for being a hothead, but seriously, I'd be pissed off too.
Yeah, definitely. Also, when Tom is trying to explain why that's a terrible idea because of the people who are in Berlin right now,
right?
I think he miscalculates. Like he tries to intimidate Nynaeve when he's warning her to guard her tongue. And he probably figures, she's a simple country woman that intimidates easily, but he's dead wrong.
Oh, could be
like he looms over her and he gets in her face and she stiffens her back immediately and refuses to be intimidated. So usually Tom's good at reading people, but I think he really miscalculated on that one.
We have a lot of information about how bad the Whitecloaks are here. It comes from Tom. He says, Whitecloak questioners assume that you're guilty before they start. They have only one sentence for that kind of guilt. They don't care about finding the truth. They think they know the truth already. All they go after with their hot irons and pincers is a confession. So, zealotry, maybe?
In case there's any doubt, Whitecloak's bad. They're terrible.
Right. Anyone who starts with the assumption that just waits for you to confess without any, you have to prove your own innocence. You're guilty in their mind. That leads to bad things.
Exactly. So I really like the part where Rand describes how Moiraine is starting to get angry. Because Moiraine is usually all calm self-possession, like she's completely in control. But no one gets her anger to flare up faster than Nynaeve, except for possibly Rand al'Thor himself.
That's true.
But those two women together is just fireworks. I enjoy it. And Nynaeve has this great little quote, whether the bear beats the wolf or the wolf beats the bear, the rabbit always loses. And it's a great little pithy quote, but what it reminded me of was actually a saying from Man of La Mancha, whether the stone hits the pitcher or the pitcher hits the stone, it's going to be very bad for the pitcher. It reminded me of that immediately, throwing in the little musical theater references.
So Moiraine talks to Nynaeve alone, and after she comes out and she has a moment with Rand. So Nynaeve can see how much Rand has changed in just this week that he's been gone.
Yeah.
He's becoming an adult, and he's starting to reason things out and question things that he would have just accepted before.
Right.
And she states that to him. It's like, wow, you've grown. Yeah,
like when he's questioning like why the village council sent her.
Right.
And she tells him, a week ago, you would never questioned anything that I did or said. And speaking of the village council, okay, so when Nynaeve explains everything that's been going on in the Two Rivers, it's important that since we called Tom out for being gender stereotypical, it's only fair that we also call out Nynaeve. Because she also, just like Tom, usually has an adage or a quote-unquote bit of wisdom that's at a man's expense. And she's constantly calling them fools and useless and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And again, just like with Tom, it's frustrating to read all the stereotypical nonsense that's so gender-specific. And I don't know. I mean, maybe so much of this is in the books because it's a major theme in this series that men and women need to work together to accomplish great things. So maybe we're supposed to see how foolish these attitudes are. And maybe we're supposed to be eye rolling really hard. And if so, mission accomplished because they're super cringy. And I am not a fan. But I wanted to be fair.
You do not stand alone in that.
Yeah, it's too bad.
So Nynaeve knows Rand was not born in the Two Rivers, and
Yes.
Rand gets one more confirmation that Tam is not his biological father here. But in that moment, Nynaeve steps out of her anger in the whole situation and into the role of a healer. And she reminds Rand that he was loved by his mother, and the implication in that I read into this is, regardless of how she came to be your mother, she loved you as if she was your mother.
Yeah.
And that's what matters. Even if that was never said to you, Rand, that's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Nynaeve is definitely saying that, your parents were your parents. They raised you, they loved you, and the biology doesn't matter,
It's true.
And I love how we get to see her loving, nurturing, tender side here at the end of the chapter after all the anger and intimidation and craziness at the beginning. I mean, when the boys first came in, it was like they were heading into their doom, at the start of the chapter.
Right.
And, to be fair, Nynaeve was definitely mad. But like you were saying earlier, she was protecting her people. And she's a mama bear, and she's going to come out swinging if she thinks you're threatening her people. But then we see it flip. Nynaeve knows about Rand, and she says the exact right thing.
Yes.
To stop him from completely freaking out because he's on the verge of losing it. And then also to console him. And the readers who try to paint her as only an anger ball aren't reading close enough, because all of her anger and her stubbornness in this chapter comes from her desperation to protect her people, because that's what she does. It's one of her defining characteristics, the desire to protect and to caretake. So I'm really glad that in the scope of this chapter, we saw both sides of her protective, angry, hot-headed side, but also her loving, nurturing side, because that's just as important a part of her character as the angry side.
We should probably subtitle this episode, We Heart Nynaeve.
I know, right?
Because, just to be clear, we love Nynaeve. Putting that out on the table.
Definitely.
In case you didn't notice. So that brings us to chapter 17. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Today's episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru is brought to you by Country Dances. What a charming amusement for young people. There is nothing like dancing, after all, as it is one of the first refinements of polished societies, and also less polished ones. Country dances, in vogue all over the world.
Chapter 17 is called Watchers and Hunters, and the icon is the Dragon Fang.
Rand goes to the common room, where Tom is telling stories and playing songs. The boys take turns to get up to dance. Rand ends up dancing with both Nynaeve and Moiraine, which he finds thoroughly embarrassing. While dancing, Rand notices a man with a scar on his face scowling at him the whole time. Later, as their frivolity is breaking up, Rand mentions the scar-faced man to Lan, who asked Master Fitch about him. He was supposedly a spy for the Whitecloaks. Lan's spidey sense is tingling, and he warns Rand that something is wrong and that they'll be leaving at first light. Rand goes to get a snack from the kitchen and comes back to find a Myrddraal waiting for him. It goes to kill him with its sword, but stops, saying that Rand belongs to the Great Lord of the Dark, and then disappears into the shadow just as Lan arrives. They decide to leave immediately, and Moiraine tries to warn the innkeeper about dark friends, but Fitch refuses to take her seriously. The party heads out, but before the guards can get the gate open, some Whitecloaks, led by Bornhald, show up. They demand to know why they are sneaking out of town in the middle of the night. Then Bornhald spots Rand and recognizes him from their encounter from earlier. He declares that Rand is a dark friend and that they are all under arrest. Moiraine is done with this nonsense and uses some tricks with the power to distract the Whitecloaks while the rest escape. Everyone is a little freaked out by the display. On the way out, Matt looks back and sees a fire visible within Berlin, and they deduce that it is most likely the Stag and Lion Inn. Nynaeve tells Moiraine that this is all her fault and that Moiraine has an obligation to go back and help. Moiraine argues back that it isn't that simple and it would end with them in Whitecloak hands or worse. Later, they manage to rest their escape for an hour, giving the boys time to wonder if they will ever be safe again.
One of the things I love about this is we get a chance to see Tom at his best.
Yeah.
He is a performer to the core. And I mean that in a classic sense of the term. I mean, he tells stories, he sings, he plays his harp, he does sleight of hand magic, and he juggles. He is an all-around performer and loves what he's doing. Like, he's got, like, Rand walks into this scene with him completely having the entire room in his thrall as he's telling the story. And I think, especially in this day and age, I think storytelling is kind of a lost art like it used to be, but Tom has got everybody's attention wrapped in just pain. Got them all by the ears. It's great.
Definitely.
This scene of storytelling and then dancing in the common room it's a welcome break from all the tension that we've been dealing with since Winter Night. It's just a real nice break in the story.
Yeah, things have been really tense. It's nice to have a breather.
Yeah, it really is.
And I also think it's hilarious to read about Rand finding himself dancing with Nynaeve and then Moiraine.
Yeah.
It's adorable because he's so awkward.
He really is.
But about that, so when Rand is talking to Perrin about it, Perrin mentions that Nynaeve never dances back home. And I think that's because of her position as the wisdom. She's had to set a standard of propriety for herself. The boys only know her as an authority figure. So it's fun to see them discover her as like a regular person. And this is the beginning of that. But it's also worth noting that, because she's had to set herself apart as wisdom, she's not used to seeing herself as a sexual being. We already know that a wisdom seldom marries.
Right.
So part of her station was to remove herself from that aspect of life. So she has not had the luxury of seeing herself as a pretty young woman or a viable romantic partner for anyone. And part of her journey in this book is her letting those restrictions go and opening herself up to the prospects that she had never before been able to because of her station.
Right. It kind of reminds me of Star Trek Voyager with Captain Janeway.
Uh-huh.
Because she's totally in that same position of she's the person leader, but she can't really engage romantically with anyone in the crew.
Right.
Because that sense of romantic relationships mess with loyalty. And
right.
She also has to make the decision of her people comes first, just like Nynaeve.
Yeah, like even though she's a flirty, feminine woman, she has to keep herself apart as captain.
Because that's the role.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's definitely the same with Nynaeve.
We get a rare moment with Moiraine where she literally cuts loose on the dance floor. It shows that she's 100% fine dancing a lowbrow dance, even though she's been high-born enough to be a noble and almost have been made queen. It shows her softer side and a side of her that likes to have a good time. Every now and then, we see a glimpse of that girl that we see in New Spring who likes to play pranks and have fun. And she doesn't get to do that in this book nearly as much. She's a lot more held up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice to see her not take herself so seriously.
Yeah, because, when you got the entire weight of the world literally on your shoulders, it kind of puts a damper on your ability to just cut loose and have fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot riding on her right now. And it's good to see this side of her because we don't see very much of it.
Right.
Nynaeve can be a little petty, and here we see that she will prove that she can handle more than the Aes Sedai, even if it's just something as simple as staying up for one more dance than Moiraine.
Yeah.
And she's
it's funny.
Funny.
I also think it's funny to watch Egwene because she can't decide who to follow, Nynaeve or Moiraine.
Oops.
Because she's been so overconfident this whole time until Nynaeve shows up. And now she's trying to hide her unbraided hair. And she's not sure who to emulate, her old mentor or her new one.
Yep.
And it's pretty amusing.
So Rand talks to Lan about this weird shadowy person.
The Scarface man.
Yeah, this person who's been watching them dancing. And Lan's not concerned about the Whitecloak spy. He could confirm that guy's a Whitecloak spy with Master Finch. But
is that really who he is? Like, I know Master Finch said he was a Whitecloak spy. Is that... I guess I always thought he was a dark friend.
It could be. I think Lan doesn't care either way because he's got bigger fish to fry right now.
True. Very true.
Because he can sense Trollocs or something. He can sense something is nearby. And he's like, this is before he even rushes everybody upstairs. Get to sleep. We're leaving early. He knows something is afoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right on the heels of the dream where Beelzebub says that Rand belongs to him, we have a Fade stop short of killing Rand and say in that last second that he belongs to the Great Lord of the Dark. So on the one hand, the forces of darkness are after Rand. On the other hand, they won't kill him because he belongs to the Dark One.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't get this. What was the Myrddraal's endgame? Like, so he didn't kill Rand because he said that Rand belongs to the Great Lord of the Dark. Okay, that's great. But if he didn't come to kill them, then what did he come for? Like, what is his goal? Like, I assume that, Pat and Fane tipped him off since Rand told Fane exactly where they were and how long they'd be staying.
Yeah.
But if the goal wasn't to kill him, then what was the point? Like, what was this?
I'm not sure. And maybe our listeners can help us out here, fill in some of the blanks.
Tweet at us at Pod-Thru.
Or email us at gmail.com.
Here's what I don't understand. The Myrddraal comes. He scares Rand but doesn't kill him. They all go running off. Like, they escape Baerlon.
Right.
And then we'll see in the next chapter that they're being chased by Trollocs who do attack. So again, we assume that they're trying to kill them. I don't understand why the Myrddraal didn't kill him here. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. I 100% agree with you. It doesn't make sense. It could just be a plot point. It could.
Yeah, but to what purpose? I mean, we've got these Myrddraals popping up like the little ghosts in the Haunted Mansion that come up behind the tombstones. Mm-hmm. They just like pop up and kind of wave and then go back down. It's like, what is happening here?
I honestly don't know. And maybe our listeners can help us out with that.
Yeah, you guys, if you know, let us know because I don't understand what the point of this Myrddraal was. So somebody tell us. Anyway, so the Fade shows up and then the Fade goes away.
So as the Fade is running away, like, it's something that's kind of unique that I haven't really seen in other stories. Like, the Fade doesn't dissolve. The shadows reach out and absorb the Fade into them.
Right.
It's not like... The way it's described to me, it sounds like the shadows are actually assisting the Fade, not the Fade commanding the shadows, if that makes any sense. And in kind of a distant... Like, it's like the shadows are actually on the side of the Dark One. It's kind of creep. It ups the creep factor for me. Mm-hmm. And then later on, when they're leaving Baerlon, like, Rand is like looking around, and he's eyeballing all the shadows because he knows that there could be something hiding in them. He just saw the shadows suck the Fade in. What's waiting in those shadows? Literally something he has no idea what.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Yeah, cool. It is. It's really creepy.
And then we get to the Whitecloaks.
Yeah.
The Whitecloaks are always causing trouble. I think we've made it pretty clear that the Whitecloaks are bad guys.
Yep.
But they're fundamentalists and they're zealots and they abuse their authority like corrupt cops. And that's really, as far as looking at it through a lens of like today's society, they're just the worst. And they really do feel like corrupt cops, like planting evidence and not caring about truth, just seeing guilt wherever they look and resorting to really horrible, like almost gang-like behavior to assert their authority.
Right.
And Bornhold especially is just crazy.
Yeah.
He's so blinded by his own power and self-righteousness. And the problem is you have these people acting, going back to the corrupt cop metaphor. I mean, it gives good police officers a bad name.
It does.
Because you have all these people who are actually doing good work, and then you have this handful of horrible people that are unfortunately the loudest,
Yes.
and the ones that are most visible, who just ruin it for everybody.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up the Whitecloaks really well. And just to kind of confirm what Tom was saying in his threats to Nynaeve earlier, the Whitecloaks are threatening to torture these people, and they want to arrest the group on a whim for no reason other than you must be dark friends, so we have to torture it out of you.
Right.
And Moiraine has had enough. Her response of, "You'll question me?" in this booming voice that just surrounds everybody in this kind of godlike way. And just the illusions that she casts and everything she does, it's actually very similar to Matt's prank at the end of the day, because Matt with his mud in the earlier chapter gets mud all over them and kind of takes them down a peg. And Moraine's thing here makes them afraid for the first time. Everybody except for Bornhold. And it's just really kind of cool that both Matt and Moiraine take them down a peg.
Oh, yeah. So Lan claps back at Nynaeve when she's blaming Moiraine for the fire. She's saying this is because of you and all these people suffering and yada, yada. And he says, no. It's because of these three boys. It's because the Dark One is after them. And at this point, he's still fiercely loyal to Moiraine.
Yeah.
And he's going to protect her even from an angry Nynaeve.
Yep.
I just think that was interesting.
It is. I mean, yeah.
And Moiraine does care about what's happening. I mean, Nynaeve likes to paint her as this unfeeling person, but she does care. And she ends up sending Master Fitch a whole bunch of gold so he can rebuild his inn. We find out later from Min later on that he's fine.
Yeah,
he's rebuilding bigger and better. He's fine.
Perrin, the broody guy that he is, he's already started asking the question if they will ever be safe. They keep asking these questions throughout the rest of this series, wondering if this will ever be over, and the answer is no.
Yeah, it's a rough series for the guys.
It really is. And again, Perrin's the one who's always kind of thinking more than the other two, so he's the one that kind of brings it out first.
Yeah, definitely.
And that ends chapter 16 and 17 of the Eye of the World.
In next week's episode, we'll cover chapters 18 and 19, where we will see our heroes get chased by Trollocs and take refuge in the most dangerous of places. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you next week. Make sure you rate and subscribe to us on iTunes or Google Play or wherever you grab your podcasts. Leave us a positive review. It really helps us get to the top of the search results. Also, we gave you guys some questions. If you have any answers or any comments, let us know. You can tweet us at Pod-Thru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com. Tell us any of your thoughts.
That's WOTPODTHRU at Twitter and at gmail.com. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon.